As with any model or framework, there are a number of limitations or weaknesses of instructional system design. The first weakness has to do with the practical value of the model. In the real world, training design rarely follows a neat, orderly, systematic fashion. In the real world, we have to design training programs within the limitations of the organization. There are forces inside the organization and outside the organization that can influence learning. We will learn more about some of those forces in the next lecture. For now, just remember that training does not happen in a vacuum, and in the real world, there are all kinds of considerations that have to be made. The ISD approach does not necessarily reflect that reality. It is a linear, step by step, stage by stage approach. Think of the ISD model as an idealistic model. Think of it as best practice, but also know that sometimes we don't follow the stages exactly as they are presented in the model for all kinds of different reasons. Another problem with this model is that it assumes training evaluation is the end of the training design process. I mentioned earlier that this is just not the case. Once you have evaluated a training program, made improvements to it, it's time to go back to that first step, conduct another needs assessment, and make sure that that training is still needed. Imagine, for example, that you create a training program in 2022, and by 2025, that training need no longer exists in the organization. The needs assessment is going to alert you to this. Then what you can do is pull that particular training program from the curriculum, shelve it, and maybe someday the need will arise again. You will already have something to work with. Because we don't yet have industry specific and situation specific models, the current frameworks are often applied incorrectly. The principles of instructional system design are not always used the way that they were intended, which can be a problem both for the originators of the theory, but also for the individuals who are incorrectly using the model. Sometimes entire steps are skipped. The needs assessment, training evaluation, those two steps, unfortunately, are often skipped, despite the fact that they are extremely important to the effectiveness of the training and the strategic value of the training. In order to overcome some of the weaknesses of the ISD approach, there are a number of things that we can do. One of the most important things we can do is weave in some flexibility. We do not have to progress exactly as the model states, step 1 through 7. We may get to step 6 and realize that we need to go back to step 3 and step 4 in order to make sure that the training program is a success. That is also okay. The training design process also needs to be flexible so that it enables the organization to adapt and maneuver to meet business needs. It can take months or even years to design truly effective training. In some industries, change is the norm. A year is too long to spend designing a training program. The process will need to be sped up in order to address the constantly changing business needs and constantly changing training needs. Some experts suggest that we spend less time focused on the steps of the process and focus more on making sure that different components are addressed. For instance, we know that training needs assessment needs to happen first, and training evaluation needs to happen at the end. The order in which we complete steps 2, 3, and 4 may differ depending on our circumstances. Steps 2, 3, and 4 may be completed simultaneously, maybe in a different order. The important thing is that we include all of the necessary components, not so much that we complete step 2 before we complete step 3. The instructional system design approach is just one way of thinking about training design. You may work for an organization that has their own approach, that has their own model. The main idea is that there is no one best way to design a training program. If we use a systematic approach like the ISD approach, we are more likely to get the most out of our investment.